Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Staying inside the fight. New Hope Regeneration presents our podcast. And today I have a very special guest, the founder, co founder of New Hope Regeneration, a dear friend now that we've known each other for a few years, one of my mentors, someone I look up to, and just an awesome, cool guy. Kevin Lucas, welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
Thank you so much, Sparks. Super excited to be on the New Hope podcast. It's kind of a funny thing to be a guest on our organization's podcast. So I do a lot of podcasts, and I know where the New Hope podcast is new, and we've had some of the most amazing guests, some of the most celebrated, successful jujitsu athletes and fighters in the world. And so, like, I'm actually kind of humble. Like, I almost feel like I don't know that I should be on the podcast.
Well, you absolutely qualify. Not only are you a bad mamma jamma in your own right, you're a multi martial artist, correct? Like you've been training martial arts pretty much your whole life.
Yeah, pretty much my whole life, and was in the stand up world for almost all of it. And over the last few years, have dunked myself into the dark side,
Yes.
into that proverbial swimming with sharks, and you don't know how to swim, right? That whole jujitsu world. So it's been pretty awesome.
No, we're so glad to have you on the right side now, right? So, and that is the best old joke. Come on to the dark side, and
That's
if you
right.
if you're listening to this podcast and you have not tried jujitsu, find a gym, go try a class. Best thing you'll do
Seriously,
for yourself. Like absolutely
literally
100%.
the best thing that I could tell you, parents with kids, like take your kids to jujitsu, make them do it for a year at least. I thought, I could be pretty effective at defending myself, defending my family with some stand-up stuff. But man, once I started training jujitsu, I remember I showed up for my first class and a 140-pound purple belt woman literally had her way with me, and there was not a thing I could do about it. And that was the moment at which it was like, this is
Wow.
different. There's nothing like it, right? Taekwondo, jujitsu, kickboxing, kung fu, karate, all of those have enough similar elements to each other that like you can step into one of those classes at an entry level and be like, okay, I'm okay. It doesn't matter if you're a multiple time black belt, you could be a master in another system, and you get on the mats in jujitsu and you don't know how to swim and you're swimming with sharks.
It's so funny when I'm with the everyday person that doesn't train, and they'll ask me, those questions, right? Fan questions. I just go 1993. Like we've already been here. We this
Right.
discussion this discussion was solved in '93 with Hoist, right? The world
Right.
found out.
Yeah.
To that point, my wife was in a noon class the other day, and she rolled with a white belt male that was her age, and she couldn't believe it, Kev. Like she was, it was pretty overwhelming to have that experience. And she's someone that lives with me. She's new to jujitsu, six
Right.
months, right? But
Yeah.
she did her first like real like I wanted to let her roll opposite sex, so he was a little bigger.
Yeah.
That was her number one comment was, I need to keep training.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Like,
Yeah, it's time. It's time in the chair.
yeah,
It really is. Most people can punch and kick to a degree, or at least like cover and kind of run away. But man, once someone gets a hold of you and you don't know what to do, or someone much stronger than you gets a hold of you and you don't know what to do, and it's just time in the chair. And so, yeah, so I love it. But what I love more than just about the training aspect is the family aspect of jujitsu. Having been in other multiple styles, having dealt with the days of our dojo challenges that come with kind of the big business that can come around some of the other established, styles or traditional martial arts world. The family environment in the jujitsu world is really just unprecedented. You're going to be loved on, you're going to be welcomed. Now, don't get me wrong. There's those the snake pits that exist out there. In the jujitsu world, there's the high level comp schools that you might not be a good fit at, or it's not a
right,
good fit for you. But even in those environments, like they're gonna let like, hey, this is for you, or our environment is for you, or it's not. And that's what I love so much about jujitsu, and it's just getting better every day.
Yes.
New Hope has been heavy in the jujitsu space now for about 4 years, and just watching the growth in 4 years, and watching the women's programs and the kids programs exploding, and watching the acceptance of us hobbyists, quote unquote.
Mhm.
There you can still talk to some old school dudes that are like, "Fuck those hobbyists," right? Excuse my English. We're all adults on this podcast, so there we go. But even that's changing, and
Mhm.
if we want it to grow, like, we have to be okay with, there's, some white collar workers, or there's, guys or gals
There
that
it
are
is.
the income providers for their families, and they can't be injured, so they can't maybe train at a competitive level, but they can still be welcomed, and they can still come and train, and be loved on, and my son played college level soccer. He played national level soccer. I was blessed that I got to be I was one of the assistant coaches. As a medical person, I was essentially the medical guy for my son's team and the club that he played for. But in most of rest of the sports, like, you don't get to do it with your kiddos, right?
Right.
But with jujitsu, like, your kids come to kids class, they stay, you hang out for adults class. You both can go to competitions and tournaments together where you both get to fight that day. Like, it's really special beyond anything that I'd ever describe. So, long story short, I know that's not the focus of today's talk, but
No, this is
that's
great.
literally
Gold.
why I love jujitsu so much.
And that's perfect because everyone that's listening right now wants to train, is training, or is the next white belt in that new
That's right.
academy. So you're helping, and I will echo that with I was able to roll with my son the other night. He's 16, and
Yeah.
I got to start paying attention. Like, I can't talk to other people while I'm rolling. I'm
Right.
like, oh my god, this kid's gonna take my lunch money. Like, and
Right.
but being able to have my wife, my 16-year-old son, my 13-year-old son, and my 7-year-old daughter on the mat, like, you don't get that time back, right? What is
Right.
my number one currency is time,
Right.
and thanks to New Hope Regeneration, I'm living my best life. I have that quality time on the mat with my entire family, and jujitsu is that vehicle.
Right.
You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
rule in our house is 2 days a week. If you're not playing a major sport, like have practice, you have to train martial arts 2 days a week.
Yeah.
If you play a major sport, you have to train martial arts 1 day a week.
I got it. I
And
love
and,
it.
and we've been doing that, and the kids, they started when they were 3 years old. You
Right.
know, so talk to me about, because you helped my family tremendously, right? And so regenerative cells have been a game changer for my life, my family, and my students. Talk to me a little bit, the audience. When I ask people, I go, "Do you guys know what stem cells are?" I get a lot of no, and then
Yeah.
I get even more crazy stories, right? So can
Right.
you are one of the world's leaders on regenerative therapy, like, and you're such an expert in this field. Please help the audience. Let us know the history of stem cells a little bit, please.
Yeah, well, let's start with, we'll jump into the history, but just as a basic Cliff Notes version of what stem cells are. So the people that are new to the podcast, or people who don't know, stem cells are your body's natural internal repair system. We are born with, our bodies are made of stem cells. Essentially, we always have, billions and trillions of stem cells, in our bodies at every moment of our lives. And just most people just don't know how their body works, right? They know we got some bones, my knee bone's connected to my whatever bone, that song we learned when we were kids. But stem cells are one of the core component of your body, and their primary function is to tell your other tissues to do their job and to repair. Right now, on our website, newhoperegeneration.com, we got some great seminars. We have some amazing books. We have audio books, so you can go get much more in-depth information about what stem cells really are, how they work, what they do, what they're not. But essentially, the long and the short is, they're the bank account that allows your body to do what it needs to do. And the most common question that we get is, Kevin, can stem cells or regenerative cells help X, Y, and Z, right? They throw out whatever diagnosis or condition that they looked up on Dr. Google or that their doctor told them that they had. And the short answer is, the beautiful part about what we do and what this therapy is that it can help anybody with anything that they have going on. And here's the best example. If you had a house or a car, right, and the alternator on your car goes out, you get a flat tire, and your battery goes dead, and then someone says, "Hey, Kevin, can this help that?" Right? Well, that's stem cells. Stem cells will help whatever is broken, right? So if your alternator is broken, what do you need to repair your alternator? Well, one, you need an alternator. Two, you need someone who can fix it, right? Or sort it out. But what do you need before those two things? There's one more thing that's necessary.
The
You need the
funds.
budget, the funds. You need the PA, you need to be able to go buy the
Hmm.
alternator, right?
Yes, sir.
And so stem cells essentially are your body's budget to be able to heal. And
Wow.
every decade we get older, we just have less stem cell funds in our own body. Our budget is lower. So I'm gonna just want to run through those numbers for you really quickly. When we're first born, we're a brand new baby. Every 1 in 10,000 cells in your body is a stem cell. So and we're about anywhere between 35 to 50 trillion cells, depending on what expert you're talking to. So trillions of cells, and
Okay.
every 1 in 10,000 cells is a stem cell. This is why children grow so quickly. This is why they could break a bone and in 3 weeks it's healed.
Hmm.
But at 50, I break the same bone and it might take me months and months to get better, right? By the time we're 18, it's 1 in every 100,000 cells is a stem cell. So at
Wow.
lifetime of when we think we're at our most functional, we've already decreased in our budget by tenfold,
Wow.
right? Now check this out. By the time I'm 30, it's 1 in 250,000 cells is a stem cell. So we get to that phase of like, there's no more day drinking. You probably are gonna have a bad day if you're eating that 18-year-old diet of Hot Pockets, Pop Tarts, and Cheetos, and
Yep.
Monster Energy drinks, right? We all know that changes. By the time you're 50, it's 1 in 400,000 cells is a stem cell.
Yeah.
So again, like, okay,
You don't
well,
have a
why at
chance.
50,
Right.
right? Why is
Y-
my body not doing what it used to be able to do? It's just simple stem cell bank account. So what if you're broke, right, and you win Mega Millions? You could fix that alternator. You could fix that flat tire. You can completely rebuild your car if you wanted to, because now you have the funds to do that. And
Yes.
that really is the long and the short of stem cells. They're your body's natural internal repair system. You have them, I have them. When you get stem cell therapy, all we're doing is we're just adding more of them to your body so your body can catch back up and heal the way that it was 5 or 10 years ago.
I think you said that perfectly. Gang, if you're listening, like that section, I would rewatch over and over again. What an amazing analogy. And it's like really makes me sit here and go, now I understand when I hit 30 why my martial arts changed. Like my workouts
Right,
didn't change, my nutrition didn't change. Like, but all of a sudden, like guys would joke and say, wait till you're in your 30s. And I'd be like, nah.
right.
And
Nah,
now I'm getting closer to 50.
right,
And so what a great example for people. Guys, if you're struggling, you don't have the bank account, right? Let New Hope Regeneration, add some funds to that account so you can heal. What a great way
right,
to break it down. Now, but I think a lot of people, when you explain that, the next thing they go, well, this ain't legal. Like,
right.
I get that all like right away. Like,
All
well,
the
yeah, but it's
time.
it's not legal.
Yeah.
Well, so what say you?
Yeah, so let's talk about the kind of the history of stem cells, and there's some different types, or there's just inaccurate information about what they thought were stem cells back in the day
Yep.
weren't really stem cells, and now we have a better understanding. Okay, so the reality is, rest of the world has been doing regenerative therapy as common health practices since the 50s and the 60s. Literally, rest of the world has been doing this as common interventions for people in Italy, France, Germany, Spain, Israel, Taiwan, Korea, Panama, Mexico, Colombia, like everywhere else, right? They've been doing it. And how we know this is, like, think about how many, like, you and I growing up in the 90s, right? And thinking about like how many times did we hear about an athlete going overseas to get stem
Mm-hmm.
cells when they got injured. It happened all the time, right? Fast forward into 2000s, it was happening even more frequently, right? So the truth is, rest of the world has been doing this for a long time. Now, one of the most common sacred cows that we need to put out to pasture, so to say, is that in the beginning of this technology, or when the science was discovering what they thought stem cells were, that's a type of stem cells called embryonic. So when people
Okay.
talk about, well, it's unethical, it's immoral, you're killing babies, that is 100% true. Collecting stem cells from the embryo, that's what they used to do back in the 40s, 50s, 60s when this was first developing, right? They would go into a female, right, and who was pregnant. They would go into a certain phase of that pregnancy, and they would draw these cells out, right? So they're killing the baby for sure, right? For me as a believer, there's no other conversation around that. You're killing this life. Well, what they didn't realize at the time is that those cells weren't actually only stem cells. Those cells were already programmed to become another tissue type,
Yep.
right? So they were differentiated cells. They weren't undifferentiated cells, which is what we're able to collect today. So when you read, on Dr. Google that you're going to get cancer if you get stem cell therapy, what they're referencing, really where that's coming from, is back in the day when the doctors and the medical teams were trying to collect stem cells. They weren't actually collecting stem cells. They were collecting cells. Those cells were already coded to become bone, blood, ligaments, tendons, hair. So they would take these supposed stem cells and would inject them into a spinal cord patient, for example,
Right.
and then that patient would develop what's called a teratoma, right? And a teratoma is a tumor. When you cut it open and you look at it, it's all those tissues. It's like, why is there hair in here? Why is there a tooth or dentin, tooth material? Why is there bone? Why is there cartilage? And so back in the day, we just didn't have the technology to differentiate. So fast forward into, let's say, that the 70s and the 80s, what started to become really popular was saving your umbilical cord or collecting stem cells from the umbilical cord. Now, the language around that time was you could only get stem cells from an umbilical cord from someone that was in your family. Okay. And
Yep.
because there would be a rejection factor, right? And what they're talking about with that rejection factor at a basic level is within the umbilical cord, there exists mom's blood cells, there exists baby's red blood cells, there exists all of these stem cells. The umbilical cord is essentially the Fort Knox of stem. It's where the largest concentration in all of our lifespan is of stem cells. And so at the time, though, the technology was still being refined to be able to separate the stem cell, which is actually an undifferentiated, unprogrammed, it's a blank cell, from all of the other tissue types in the blood cell. So if you got a red blood cell from the mom that was a different blood type than you, there could be a rejection factor. So that's where, when they talk about matching, that's where that was necessary. Well, fast forward to today, and really for the last 15 or 20 years or so, the technology has been so refined that we now can completely separate all of those other cells and fluids and tissues and debris that's in that umbilical cord from the stem cells. So a really great analogy is that if I have a barrel and there's apples and there's cantaloupes and there's watermelon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's grapes in that, the technology exists to be able to separate the grapes, to separate the apples, to separate the oranges, the tangerines, because they're all sizes, right? On average, cells are a particular size on average. And now the tech exists for us to be able to completely separate all of the red nucleated blood cells that could potentially cause an HLA reaction if it's not the same blood type from the stem cells. So today we live in a world where anybody can get therapy without a rejection factor. And that's why this has exploded all over the world, and rest of the world had really refined this about 20 to
Right.
30 years ago. And so when people say, and you and I hear it all the time when we're
Mm-hmm.
out educating and giving seminars and talking with potential clients, they're like, oh, I didn't know it was legal. What they mean about the legality piece is before 2015, it was illegal for people to receive stem cells in the United States unless you were dying of cancer. So pre 2015, the laws and the rules in the United States, even though that this was totally safe, totally ethical, totally functional, and rest of the world, again, they'd really refined this process back in the 70s and 80s. You couldn't get it in the United States. You had to literally have a mortality diagnosis of cancer and then be at typically some kind of a research hospital, MD
Wow.
Anderson, the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, to receive it. Right. So, how crazy is it that this life changing, life saving therapy has been available for so long in a safe, effective way, but we couldn't get it here in the United States? Fast forward to 2015, that law was changed, and now people are able to receive regenerative therapy in the United States. The language piece is what people run into when people say, it's when people are looking for FDA approval. What they mean by that, it's FDA approved for insurance coverage and to be able to treat or cure a disease or condition.
Yeah, let's talk about this because I get this question a lot. So
Right.
I really want you to explain to the audience, guys, understand something. Number one, um, New Hope is the leader in this charge, the way we do it, right? Over 300,000 plus therapies. So,
Yeah.
Kevin is bringing this. It's ethically, it's sourced right. We're using, it's really such an amazing method, but to think of what they did, it's almost criminal. I'm like
Yeah.
a little bit like annoyed, as you should be if you're listening to this. But that's a podcast for another time.
Right.
Understand, New Hope follows, and well above, right, above anything that's out there. Talk to us
Right.
about the difference, like now that we know that everyone's not ethical, like how does New Hope approach it, and what's that New Hope difference?
Yeah, so the big difference is in 2015 when the moratorium was lifted off of regenerative therapy in the United States. Essentially there were guidelines that were put into play. Our organization and our teams were part of helping like lift those guidelines up to a high level.
Wow.
And essentially what it came down to is number one, we cannot say the words cure or treat in the United States. So when people, let's say, go look at, let's say, a website in the United States for regenerative therapy, and then they look at a website out of country, they'll be like, oh, well, in Panama, Mexico, Germany, Italy, like they say they cure or treat all of these issues. We legally can't say those things in the United States because in the US, the only two things that legally can cure or treat any disease or condition is, Sparks, you want to guess what they are?
Let's see. Maybe you could give me some pills, or you could dice
Yep,
me up.
that's right. Drugs or surgery,
That's it.
pharmaceuticals or surgery. In the United States, written into law, the only two things that could legally cure or treat any disease or condition in the United States are surgery or drugs. So, because this is looked at, and we can talk about the specifics of how that approval comes into play, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because it's really just semantics and it's really pretty insane. So essentially, regenerative therapy is put under the natural therapy umbrella
Gotcha.
because you can't tell a stem cell what to do. You can't patent it, right? Essentially, for something to receive FDA approval in the United States, you have to patent it for it to do one mechanism or thing and one thing only. That's how you get approval for something at a basic level. There's a little more to it, but that's
Yep.
the basic nuts and bolts. So fast forward, you have this amazing intelligent cell that can't be told what to do. It's going to know where to go. It's going to know what to do, when to do it. So that automatically moves it out of the definition of what can be approved for treatments or cures or not. So the reality is that it is FDA regulated and monitored. They're in our facilities all the time, inspecting and looking at things. And we actually got to be help part of that journey to make sure that it's safe, that it's effective. And again, like not all black belts are created equal. Not all companies that process stem cells are created equal. As a provider, I
Yeah.
got to choose between about 20 different companies. Just like if I'm going to sell a car, right?
Mhm.
If I want to start a car dealership, am I going to sell Chevy? Am I going to sell Ford? Am I going to sell Kia, Hyundai, whatever, right? Within the medical space, it's the same. When you start offering a product, there's always multiple companies creating, building, supplying, and processing, whatever it happens to be. And stem cell therapy is exactly the same. So when New Hope Regeneration was looking to see what company we wanted to go with, we were really pretty shocked at how low the standards were and what the minimum requirements were. Right? Think about one of the things that separates jujitsu on average from the traditional martial arts mills is you and I both know there's a lot of traditional martial arts mills I could walk in, I pay my money, and in 3 years I have my black belt. That is
Two
not going to
years.
happen. There you go. That's not going to happen in jiu-jitsu, right? The
No.
standards are so high on average. And in the regenerative therapy world, it's the same. You know, what the minimum standards were put out there, like New Hope literally does triple the amount that is required by the powers that be. And this is one of the big reasons on why our clients see improvements and changes oftentimes coming in for one round of therapy, where the feedback that we get is, you know, Kevin, I've done therapy with another company. I had to go 2 or 3 times, and still even then I didn't really know that I got a noticeable result. I spent $30,000-$40,000 and nothing happened from it. And then they get therapy with us. They spend a fraction of that, like literally a tiny fraction of that. And they're like, this changed my life. My blood work is different. My anecdotal experiences are different. My pain levels are different. But, you know, the doctors are seeing the changes in my inflammatory levels, my immune system function. They had to take me off my blood pressure medications. So it's really a pretty amazing thing. So the technology has changed. It's allowed us to collect the cells in an amazing way, to protect the cells in an amazing way. And it really was the powers that be just didn't want people to have it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why athletes were going out of country. You know, like there's so many examples. And if you look at how many 40 to 50-year-old professional athletes that are around in the last 5 years compared to every other decade before that, it's
That's why.
astronomical. And it's because
No.
they're doing stem cells.
Nah, like Tom Brady just like that's all you can look at the GOAT right there if you consider
Right.
him the GOAT in football. Like the guy was he was flying there all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
documented. Like he
Right.
talked about it openly with his diet and it was part of his
Yeah.
health and wellness. And I really
Correct.
like what you said. This has been commonplace in Europe and other countries for
Right.
years. So I think really, if the audience that's listening, this is gold because now we're getting educated. We're understanding what a stem cell is, what it can and can't do. Like, so could you talk a little bit about that? Like, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I really
Yeah.
want the audience to understand, like, the limitations, the success, like, but give us a little overview of, like, what is the technology and what can and it can't do.
Yeah. So there's a few things. One, I want to be super clear. If you ever have a clinic telling you that they can guarantee a particular outcome, you need to run the other direction, right? Just like surgery, just like medications, there are no guarantees. There are patterns that we can see on average of success of our clients. And now that you've been with us for a couple of years, not only you personally, but you've seen it hundreds of times now personally with your students and friends and colleagues. But it's not like Wolverine from the movies. It's not like you can get shot, it spits the bullet out, and it heals in 3 seconds. It doesn't work quite that fast. Okay. It is the next best thing, though, right? So we've really never had a client who's not had something improve. But this is what a person really has to understand is that a client can come into me with let's say their right knee is killing them. Like, Kevin, this is the thing that I really want to get better. We're like, okay, fantastic. The vast majority of our clients, when they come in, we definitely see improvements with that health challenge. But what the client needs to know is that if you have other things that are going on that the body sees as more important than that injury in the knee, it's going to intelligently know that we're actually going to use a chunk of this therapy to go manage that health challenge. And in jiu-jitsu, this is a really great way to understand this. If I'm hyper focused on wanting to get an arm bar, like I go into my match and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this arm bar, but I get choked out and I'm taking a nap because I didn't defend the choke. No amount of me wanting to get that arm bar matters because there's a priority mechanism in jiu-jitsu,
There it is.
right? And
Yep.
in the body, it's the same. Your body knows better than what you do consciously on what needs to get repaired, when, and how. So where a lot of the misunderstandings come from with this is that they think, oh, well, if I get stem cells, then, I'm 40 and I've had 3 ACL repairs, my knee's going to be like it was before I ever got injured. We can't say that that's what's going to happen, right? Or we have clients who are going to be like, hey, I'm going to get stem cells and then I'm still going to eat McDonald's 5 days a week and
Right.
drink a case of Keystone a night and still expect my body to be perfectly healthy. Now, we do have some clients that get stem cells once a year because now when they drink, their back and their liver doesn't hurt. I definitely encourage them to, can you have a beer a night instead of a
Right.
case of beer a night? But so there's really no limitation on it being able to help the body. A client or a potential client just has to understand is that their body is going to be in charge. So the order
Mhm.
and which projects and which order are going to get better are up to the body, and they're not up to what you want to have happen. So we're really clear about that. Now there's some other clinics around the country that will like, hey, I can guarantee if you do our treatment protocol, it's going to last for 15 years. Like they send it to them in paperwork saying
It's
like, here's
crazy.
what's going to happen. And if you ever get that, I'm just telling you to be super transparent and honest. We don't know what your body is going to want to work on in what order. Right now, I know if your right knee hurts you, but there's also maybe a liver or a heart or a kidney issue. Your body might say, hey, we want to spend some time getting these on track. We'll get to the knee, like, but these are a little bit more important. Just like I can't do jujitsu if I'm sleeping.
Nope. I'll share a personal experience to that point. I was looking, after a no hope diagnosis, go into one of those clinics south of the border because I didn't know about New Hope yet. And they told me that I was too sick that they couldn't do therapy. They said, yeah,
Right.
so they literally, I was ready to spend way too much, right? And they literally turned me away. And that, I
Yeah.
believe that was God looking out for me because
Right.
it was all about timing. But like, that's wild to me that the misinformation that's out there is like the Wild
Yeah.
West,
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
true.
thank you so much for explaining that. As far as the technology goes, what did like, why have we gotten here so that we're seeing those results? The people are
Yeah.
getting better. What do you attribute that to? Our clients, like how often do they have to like do this? Because I get a lot of, dude, I feel great, and they're rocking. So what's been
Right.
your experience with that?
Yeah, so in regards to the technology stuff, really when it comes down to it, like it's like technology on a car. Like, do I really want to know what compression rate of cylinder number 4 is and how
No.
the dual overhead cams are working and the timing? Most people don't really want to know that. Now, that's my passion and my specialty. My background is in neurobiology and embryology and pain science. And so for me, I'm a body junkie. Like, I love to know every mechanism down to how, the mitochondrial voltage, like all those things. And so where we are at right now is our ability to collect the cells and protect them
Mhm.
so they can then be put into another person to then just do their job is outstanding, and that's what didn't exist. No different than electricity wasn't available for the majority of the planet 100 years ago. Running hot water at the turn of a knob wasn't really available 100 years ago for the majority of the planet, and now we carry supercomputers in our pocket, right?
Right.
And so, from a regenerative therapy perspective, collecting these cells, the technology is so advanced and so refined that we can do it safely. We can make sure that, where the cells are coming from, the moms are healthy, the babies are healthy. We can collect the cells without a lot of damage, right? There's some things that happen in there. We can freeze the cells to make sure that once they're reanimated, that the 90% of them are going to be viable and awake, and alive to be able to do their job. That's one of the things that comes up all the time too. Is like, oh, the cells have been frozen, so they're not alive anymore. And I actually almost lost a good doctor friend with this. So when he found out that we were starting to do regenerative therapy, he's like, Kevin, I can't believe like you're doing this. It's snake oil, it's malarkey, it's the cells are all dead when you freeze them. Um, and so he wouldn't talk to me for like a year. Finally, he had like 4 or 5 of his clients that were communal, or common patients between the two of us, got therapy, and their lives were changed. And finally, he had to be like, okay, can we have a conversation? I said, yeah. I said,
Sure.
Doc, now what did you tell me that you did to make money when you were in college? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, Doc, what did you do to make money when you were in college? She's like, I donated my sperm. I said, okay, perfect. I said, did they take your little soldiers and immediately go put them in another woman trying to make a baby? Or was there a step before that? He's like, no, they froze them. And I
Boom.
said, so you mean to tell me that once a cell is frozen, it can't be reanimated and still be viable and functional and healthy? And it was crickets, and he got this
Yeah.
big smile on his face. So I said, so Doc, you cut me off for a year because you just bought into the bullshit that was being
Yep.
slung about this, and scientifically what you were saying was not accurate, right? There's an article, I have it like on my phone, where the longest in vitro fertilization came from a 22-year-old sperm and egg. So these eggs and sperm were frozen for 22 years, in cryo frozen. They
Yep.
reanimate them, put them together, and make twins, right?
Amazing.
So again, I can go to a switch on my wall, turn it on, and I have electricity. I go to a knob in my house and I turn it on and I have running hot water. Anybody saying that these things are not true are not updated, or they just don't want to believe that it's possible. Like, that's where
Well,
we are.
you said perfectly, because you cannot graft a new idea on a closed mind. And
That's
I
right.
and think of that. If in my mind I believe the cells, oh well, they freeze the cell, like they're dismissing this life-changing therapy because of
Correct.
misinformation. All the things you touched on today, guys, if you're listening, like, think of how powerful that is. Don't let misinformation keep you back from living your best life. Like,
Right.
seek out the information. And you said something to me a while ago, and I use it all the time. I didn't take a horse and buggy to work today. I,
Right.
I drove the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Like, evolution is real. And, I think as people get educated, and obviously this platform, this podcast is doing that, we want to continue spread the message that there is
Right.
hope. You're not your diagnosis. These things
Right.
do evolve. And that really, my story, having that experience, that cold, I was a number. I was what I mean? And then find a new hope. What's the new hope difference? What makes new hope? We understand this, obviously, all the things you talked about already, right? So
Right.
the process, the way we're doing it, the approach. But what's the next thing that for people to understand? Why should they choose New Hope Regeneration?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to be really clear. I know sometimes, the medical community can feel like we're picking on doctors. So I want to clear that up real quick. Your average neurologist isn't delivering babies and doesn't know the newest, most effective things in the delivery room. Your urologist doesn't know the most up-to-date things in the neuro world, right?
Right.
There's so much information out there that nobody could be an expert in everything. And the regenerative medicine space is exactly the same thing. It's its own huge entity, and so many of these doctors who think they know something about it have never even taken a 1 day workshop on regenerative therapy, right? The older doctors. Now, what's fascinating is that when our clients come in, they talk with us, they do a consult, and they're like, okay, I want to ask my doctor about it. What we're finding is that if the doctor is 45 and older, they'll say, nah, it's bullshark. If
Right.
the doctor is 40 and younger, they're like, I'm so excited that you're going to do this. This is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see what happens. So it's just horse and buggy, right? Henry Ford said it. He said, people were asking for a faster horse, and I was trying to give them a car, right? Like, it's the same in the medical world. So, that being said, your doctor does, I believe, have your best intentions in mind. They just might be uneducated, misinformed, and haven't put the time and the energy into really updating themselves about where regenerative therapy is. And we know, if you've ever lived out of country, I got to live in South Korea for a year. How rest of the world practices healthcare is, it's not even, we can't even call it the same thing in the United States, right? Now, that's a
No.
whole other podcast. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but all that to say, your doctors mean well. Many of them are just not updated with where things are at today, and that's okay.
Well, but you
So,
know what? That was important that you said something. I don't want to skip over it. You said, let me ask my doctor.
yeah,
And I think there is some of the gap, because think of how much power we're giving that individual over us, like
right,
that I was giving to those individuals. when there's that, you just basically told me there's this ocean out there,
Right.
but I'm in I'm in the inflatable kiddie pool, like
That's exactly
because
right.
all I can do is two things, right?
Right.
So so I'm putting all of my eggs in that one individual's, and that individual might not even be educated to know that there's a big ocean out there.
That's right. And this
Wow.
is where so many docs are leaving the hospital or traditional medical model and going into a concierge practice model because now they can choose to practice and offer their clients what's best and what's most up to date versus in the traditional hospital, traditional insurance system. These MDs have zero control over what they get to do with their clients because the insurance companies are dictating to them what their treatment interventions are, and
Yeah.
it's limited, right? And so again, I don't want to get too lost on that. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows, like, these docs do have your best interest in mind. Many of them are just not up to date, and that's okay, and that's what we're
Yep.
here for. So now going into what makes New Hope different. um, there's a lot of interesting things that happen in business, right? And a business has to decide what their end goal is. And I believe that everybody is in this stem cell world is wanting to help people. But it's still a bit of the wild west in regards to the business practices. And what I mean by that is that you and I, and you have this personally, right? You and I both know that most of the time regenerative therapy is literally, the average cost globally is anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000, right?
Hmm.
And here's what we tell people at New Hope Regeneration: don't take what I'm saying, my word for it. Call these other places and do
Yes.
consultations, right? Talk to them. We want you to go where you feel most comfortable and you feel like it's the best fit for you. And so, but what New Hope did was we wanted to flip the script, and we saw how life changing this therapy was. And I didn't want the majority of people to be financially in a situation where it was just out of their reach, right? You and I both know we've been business people for a long
Yeah.
time. You're an expert martial artist, I'm an expert healthcare provider, and then we're both business owners. And I ask people this question all the time. I say, hey, what is gas in California? How much does gas cost per gallon in California? And right now it's about $6 a gallon. In Florida, I'm $2.90.
Hmm.
What's the difference between the fuel in California and the fuel in Florida? It's one thing and one thing only. It's business practices, right? So when New Hope came into business and we decided we wanted to enter into the regenerative therapy space, we said we wanted to make this as accessible and as affordable to as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
So instead of making X amount of dollars per person, right? Now we said, well, how do we operate as a business? How can we grow? But more importantly, how can we help people and their families,
And their families.
right? Because if the average price point is 30 grand at a base price point, how many, if we know, so Sparks, do you know what the average household income is in today's world?
If I had to guess, it's probably like 50 grand, right? 48
It's
grand.
around 70 grand this
Oh,
year.
okay, a little higher. All
Right
right.
now, it's around 70 grand. So if
Okay.
my whole household income is 30 grand or is 70
70
grand,
grand.
where am I coming up with 30?
You're not.
What if I have to do therapy twice? Where am I coming up with 60 or 70 or 80 grand, right? And that's what you were quoted, right? Before they told
Yes.
you, we don't think we can help you, Sparks, you're probably going to have to come twice and it's going to be 30 grand a pop or 35 grand a pop, right?
30.
Now, I want to be really clear. Like, other businesses have helped so many people and they paved the way, but Henry Ford also changed the game of affordability in automobiles by creating a quality product that was affordable, and that's what our goal has been. So our one of our taglines is fighters and their families. Because yes, we want the martial artists to get better so they can do what they're doing. But what if your wife has something going on that she needs help with her health? What if your parents have something going on? What if your kiddos have something going on? So not only did New Hope want to create one of the most effective forms of regenerative therapy possible, which is what we've done. Number two, we wanted to bring it to the masses. And this is something that I want people to understand is that when I got to choose which company I was going to go with, which stem cells we were going to use, some of the business models were so perverted and predatory. I actually was not going to go offer it to my clients because it was so disgusting. Here's a really good example. There's some business models that are, when you pay for therapy, you pay for every time they poke you. So if you get two knees injected, they charge you for two therapies, even though that they're using the
Insane.
same amount. If they would have put that amount into one IV, you would have been one price point. But if you take that same volume and you split it and you put it into two knees, they charge you for two separate therapies.
And you
So,
told us earlier, you literally told us earlier that we can't decide where it goes, right?
right. So ultimately, that doesn't even matter,
Bingo.
right? So another thing that happens is that there's some language around, well, it has to be ultrasound guided. Like you have to use an ultrasound to make sure that you put the cells in the right. One, that's not true. The stem cells are going to go where they're going to go, even if I put them in a specific spot. But guess what I get to do when I use that ultrasound in my office for your therapy? I get to charge you more because now I'm using another piece of equipment that I need to charge you to use, right? So there when I was shopping like this company, that company, this company, that company, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And so for us, we've completely flipped that script and we flipped that model. And I get in, especially in a capitalist country, very rarely do you get the best quality product at the lowest possible price point. That's usually not true.
Mm.
But that is what New Hope has done, is that we've really wanted to create truly the best quality source of these amazing life-changing cells at the best possible price point imaginable. And I would rather help more people get therapy and make less money per client than help a smaller percentage of clients and make more money per individual client, right? There's a term called iatrogenic poverty. And what that means is that people are going broke because of their medical
Yeah.
interventions,
Yep.
right? And I don't believe that anybody should ever be asked to mortgage their house. I don't believe that anybody should be asked, hey, do you have a second or a third car that you could sell that you could pay for this for? Like it shouldn't happen. We shouldn't live in that kind of a world. And so that's one of the things. And again, every business has to operate how they're going to operate. But here's the question that we get all the time. And I say, what if I'm telling you the truth? What if I'm telling you the truth that on average, our clients see massive improvements with coming into us one
One
time?
time.
And it doesn't mean that's the only time that you should get therapy, right? Some people might need a second or a third therapy a year or 2 years later or whatever. But what if I'm telling you the truth that out of 300,000 clients that have gotten therapy, 85 to 90% of them meet their health goals, and our price points could be here instead of here,
It's amazing. It's
right?
absolutely life changing. And, all superheroes don't wear capes, brother. So my family is like literally changed my family's life, like immensely.
I
Got
appreciate that very
so
much.
listen, guys,
Yeah.
all
So
superheroes don't wear capes, man. So you and Casey are trailblazers. New Hope is not only the leader, but they're trailblazing for all of us to live our best life, and that's a big
right.
deal.
Yeah, and that, it's our goal. I'm so grateful and thankful to all of the lead work that everybody has put into making this possible. But I don't have to buy a Bentley to have a car, right? I could buy a really awesome, reliable, sporty, fun, functional car, at X price point instead of 400 grand, right? And in the regenerative therapy world, right, you can come in at 3,500 or 6,500 instead of $30,000, right? And again,
Wow.
if the right fit for you is to go someplace else, fantastic, right? We're not a high pressure salesy, like you said. You're not just a number to us. And Sparks, like, this is what I love about you sharing your story as well, is that you went down that gamut. You spent 3 years, 4 years,
Yeah.
5 years of in the system being
Yep.
treated as a number, and then in not only just in the western medicine world for your health challenge, but then when you tried to go get therapy, right, you
Yep.
were then treated as just kind of as a number. And so you going through the New Hope process, what have you found to be different with New Hope compared to when you were exploring the possibilities of this with other companies?
Oh man, he flipped the script and asked the interviewer the question. So
Yeah.
I think you explained it. It's the New Hope difference. You have a heart for healing. If I had to say one thing about New Hope Regeneration, everybody that's on the team has a heart for healing. And I felt like I was Michael Jordan. Like I had the owner of the company on the phone with me, texting me. I had an unbelievable, consultation with a high level medical professional. I had the operations director call me personally to set up with and I was sick. And so he dealt with my wife. Like the process was, I literally felt like a rock star, a movie star, and I'm just a nobody, So it truly was concierge service. And there was a couple moments I'm like, this can't be right. Like there was,
Right.
I had that and then the God bumps and the goosies when I got to experience it. What if Kevin is telling the truth?
Right.
And that's why I did it. And I am so glad I chose to ask that what if question. But that's been my experience is I got treated the way I believe humans should be treated, right?
Right.
Like you treated me and you treated me like a not only an individual but a family member. I felt New Hope surround me to make sure that we could, get the best possible therapy, and then the follow up was incredible. So really from start to finish, it was concierge service.
Yeah. Well,
And
thank you. I appreciate you sharing that, and that really is a goal for us, and especially for the jujitsu people out there, and academy owners. Like we get this all the time, and this is a really great analogy, right? So there's two things that I want to cover. I said one is when people say, "Well, you have to go out of country to get real stem cells." What if I told you you had to leave the United States to get real jujitsu now?
uh,
That was true in the 80s and 90s because it wasn't here yet,
yep,
right? But now fast forward 2024, right? Where are the top people doing and learning and training jujitsu
right
in the
here,
United
baby.
States on average, right? So
Yeah,
regenerative therapy, it's the same. New Hope we've just now we've created a safe, effective, affordable system that is changing lives. And you don't have to if you don't want to. Now, if you want to go, great. Like if you want to go to Brazil and train jiu-jitsu, amazing. But you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to go out of country for that. The
that's
other
huge.
thing when people say, well, like, how can it be possible that what you guys are doing for your price points? Because if all the other people are this price point, way up here, and you're way down here, and here's what I ask professors, especially academy owners. I say, professor, like, what do you charge for your classes for a monthly due? And it's you and I both. I mean, you ran academies. Normally, it's 125 to 200 a month, right? On average. Let's just say on average. Okay.
Sure.
I said, what if you charge 2 grand a month for your dues? What's going to happen?
Way
You're
down.
going to close in a month because what percentage of people can afford
Can't.
2 grand a month to do jujitsu? What percentage of the population can afford to do regenerative therapy at 30? We have clients that were
Yeah.
paying 75 grand once a year to go do therapy, right? So why was it only professional athletes were doing therapy before? Because they were the only ones on average who could afford
Yeah.
who could afford to do it. So when we looked at what is the problem isn't that it's safe. It isn't that it's effective. It was that it wasn't affordable.
That's
So
it.
that's where we came in to flip the script and say, how do we make this accessible to most people, right? And that so then when you combine that with how do you make sure that you're getting the highest quality cells in the world,
Yeah.
right? That's the other thing. And so I mean, I even have healthcare providers. We have, a bunch of offices around the country where we do therapy. And we've had some of our providers who, when they get on board with us, they used to inject for other organizations, and they're like, "There's no way you guys are doing this at this price point." And then they come in, they do training, they get therapy themselves, and they're like, "This is unprecedented. What you guys?" But they didn't believe it until they saw it, right? Because it's not the norm. And guess what? New Hope is not the norm, right? We're flipping that script.
Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right either way.
Right.
You quoted the man earlier. You're the trailblazer,
Yeah.
and that's really what you're doing. You are leading the way. You're going to change. We are going to change so many lives, guys. If you have not seen a seminar, go to newhoperegeneration.com. Watch the free seminar. You will be blown away. But it really is. It starts with education, and where you go matters. All black belts are not created equal. We want you to come to the New Hope family. We want you to see healing is possible. The rest of your life can be the best of your life. Kevin, final thoughts.
What I want to leave people with is you are not your diagnosis, right? So that language that gets spoken over you, right? Right. Think about it. Like if your child was learning to walk and every time they fell down, you're never going to walk again. You're never going to figure it out. You're never going to be able to do this, right? That's what happens with diagnoses in people. People get a diagnosis and they're told by every medical professional, you're never going to be able to do this again. It's always going to be that way. It's
Yep.
only going to get worse, right? So you are not your diagnosis, number one. Number two, there is hope for healing, right? If you have an inkling of even a tiny little spark that things can be different, I'm telling you, they can be different. I see it all day long. Aside from my wife and my children and my new grandbaby and my fish, the thing that I love the most is on my phone. I have this folder titled Positive Testimony. And literally every single day, I get text messages and my phone blows up of our clients sending in what's happening for them, how their lives are changing, their images, their blood work, their scans, all the stuff that they were told this is never going to be better. This is never going to be any different.
Amazing.
So there is hope for healing, and really, truly, the rest of your life can be the best of your life. Sparks, it broke my heart when I started working with academy owners and competitors who were told, you're never going to compete in another tournament, or professor, you should sell your school because your body's so broken you can't keep teaching class. I would have guys on the phone in tears saying, Kevin, I can't even teach a fundamentals class 1 day a week right now because when I do, I pay for it for a month and then I can't do anything. And so I got to sell my business because I can't be the guy anymore. Right. And so now these men and women are training 5, 6, 7 days a week again. They're training 5 or 6 days a week and
Yes.
still going home on the weekends and having a full tank of gas to take their wives out on dates, to go play with their children and their grandchildren. So when I
Yep.
say the rest of your life can be the best of your life, what's happening for our clients is that they are living a better level of life than they were a decade or two ago. How
Mm,
crazy is it at
that's crazy.
60 now? I mean, you were just at Pans with us for the first time, right? This was your first
Yes.
year getting to come to a major event with us. How many old guys came by with medals who hadn't competed in 5 years?
It was like the best part of our day. We'd have another one come by, and it was like, here's another one. They were so excited to come to see you, to hug you, thank you, take pictures with you, and that true story. I mean, we had multiple podiums from Team New Hope Regeneration. So
Yeah.
that was really cool for me to see those guys so grateful and thankful because what's happened.
Right. And what we're really excited about is now that people are becoming educated, instead of having to wait until you're in your late 40s or your 50s or your 60s to do this, and now we're helping triage a really broken body. What if you could start implementing this in your 30s? Right?
Yep.
Think about that trajectory change, is that now instead of becoming more broke as you get older and you can't keep up with the projects on your house, you win mega millions, your house doesn't have to go into disrepair, and you still get to do all the amazing stuff you love doing. So again, why are we seeing more older high level athletes? It's because they're doing regenerative therapy, and
Yep.
New Hope wants to take that a step further. And what if this could just be part of your journey? Once a year, you come in and you get therapy and you win mega millions every year. What could you and your family do with that budget? What can your body do with a giant flood of regenerative cells that are responsible for fighting inflammation, for helping with degeneration, for helping your immune system, for helping, change scar tissue to be more functional tissue? There's a reason that our clients are training more days per week. There's a reason our clients' marriages are being saved. They're playing with their family and their kids at ways that they never thought they would get to do. And you don't even have to be a high level athlete, right? Sparks, people who are doing this now that are not a jiu-jitsu person, but their lives have been changed. This is for everybody. It's safe, it's simple, it's effective, and it's affordable. And that's what I want to leave people with. So go to newhoperegeneration.com, get the resources. We have audiobooks, we have ebooks, we have podcasts, we have radio shows that can walk through all these things. More importantly, schedule your consultation with one of our medical team. They're going to sit with you 45, 60 minutes on the phone. They're going to walk through your health history. Most of our clients say, Kevin, I have never had a medical team spend that much time with me and really listen to what I have going on and what my goals are. They're first, almost always they're first in that situation. And I know you had that similar experience with us, and it blew your mind. And that's what we want with the New Hope difference. And let's change your life. Let's change your family's lives. And let's make this generational, yo.
Man, phenomenal. Phenomenal. So, guys, please check out newhoperegeneration.com. Subscribe and like Inside the Fight on YouTube. That's where this podcast is. Check out all the other videos. Drop a comment. Let us know what you think on some of those other videos. We want to hear from you. And Academy owners, call to action. If you just heard something you liked, contact Kevin, contact myself. We want to tell you about an exciting Matrix repeat program so that you can get exactly what Kevin was talking about. Guys, until next time, thank you so much. My name is Kris Sparks. This is Inside the Fight, the New Hope Regeneration podcast. So happy. We want to see you next time on the mat. Us.
If you enjoyed the show, visit newhoperegeneration.com. And be sure to tune in to the next episode to learn more about regenerative therapy.